Hello and welcome to Link Ahead, the award-winning City of Dublin podcast. Okay, we'll get to the award-winning stuff at the end as a teaser.
Oh yeah, I'm sure our loyal listeners are all on the edge of their seats for that, Bruce. But first, let's get to today's guests. Two talented, dedicated, and all-around awesome guys who are ready to drop all kinds of knowledge in this episode. Let's get some introductions.
All right, so we got Matt Guthrie and Tim Fleischer. They're both assistant horticulturists with our great city, and they keep Dublin looking beautiful all year round, along with our team of other horticulturists and so many others. Matt and Tim, thanks for joining us on Link Ahead.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, we're excited.
Yeah, we're
Awesome.
excited too. Fun fact right up front here, you two actually have your own podcast. So wait a minute, are we competitors?
Oh, wow.
What
We are competitors.
Different category.
Oh,
Okay.
wow. I think there's enough going to go around. People have enough time.
I think so.
So ours comes out every other week. How about you guys?
Ours comes out weekly.
Wow.
So we're one up on
man.
that. So
Well,
Okay.
but we're not near as professional as this one.
Okay. All right.
that's part of the allure, I'm
Yeah.
sure. And you both started working for the city of Dublin before I did. In fact, if LinkedIn is correct, you both started the same year in 2013. Is that
Yep.
right?
That is
Yeah.
correct.
Well, talk about your time together and becoming not just tenured coworkers, but best buds.
Well, yeah, like you said, we started here in 2013, and I don't know, we've just over the years have become like best friends. We do this podcast together. We, obviously work together and hang out outside of work. Our families have done stuff together, and yeah, so
I'd say here at work, our interest in gardening and horticulture has just evolved concurrently with one another. Right?
yeah, for sure.
So, it started with, being just tree guys, and we've really evolved into a lot of more delicate nuances of horticulture.
That's awesome. And that's one thing that's a common theme, I think, Lindsay, on all of our podcasts, is that we have experts in pretty much every field in the city.
Absolutely. Right.
And it's just awesome to have, to bring this to light so everyone can, know what we know every day. So,
Yeah.
so, all right, let's stay back in that Wayback Machine for a bit. So the both of you, when did you get that outdoors kick where you wanted to be stewards of nature? And was that as a kid in school? Did that just snap with you guys?
So my dad was the city forester of the town I grew up in, up near Cleveland, and he did a lot of gardening, vegetable gardening, and fruit trees in our backyard. So that was just part of life, was helping weed and harvest, and that's where it came from with me.
Nice.
So
Yeah, so for me, just kind of growing up, playing in the woods, things like that. I come from a family where we did a lot of fishing. I was around some hunting when I was younger. So I think just the natural world has always been a part of my life. And then I got my first like official job when I was 16 years old, and that was working at a retail garden center. So that kind of is what led me to falling in love with plants. So
Oh, nice. So tell
Yeah.
us about what you do for the city.
City of Dublin Horticulture takes care of all the landscaped beds, trees, and natural areas within Dublin parks and open spaces. So anything from designing, installing, and maintaining a landscaped flower bed to tree pruning, tree removals, tree plantings, and then even the maintenance of natural areas, whether that be intensive or more passive.
This is no small feat with 64 parks
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and
it
beyond.
keeps us busy for sure. Yep.
And it's all year round as well.
Yeah.
All right, so both of you are experts in this stuff, and we know Dublin residents put lawn pressure on their neighbors, and they have great yards, gardens, fantastic landscaping that makes our neighborhoods just shine. So let's help our residents with some serious knowledge from you two. Okay.
Mhm.
All right. So we haven't had rain in a while. Well, we did have tremendous rain recently.
Not
but
enough, though.
No, not enough. Lawns are getting brown and crunchy, and water is a very precious resource. So should we water or should we just let it go?
I think we're in the same boat together. Like we just kind of let it go. I guess if you don't mind paying for those astronomical city water bills, then by all means water. The grass really needs like an inch of rain a week to stay healthy. At this point, if you started watering, I feel like you would need to put 12 inches of water,
Wow.
12 inches of rain on it,
Yikes.
to get it back where it needs to be. But I'm kind of in the boat of just let it go, and then fix any problem spots when it does start to come, back out of dormancy. So
Your grass has just gone dormant. It's
Yeah.
not dead.
Okay.
So this
Oh,
is
good to
just the
know.
natural cycle of things.
Yep.
When as we head into fall, that doesn't mean gardens have to be bare, right? So what are your suggestions for some colorful fall plantings?
This is a fun one for us because one of the things that Matt and I really focus on is making sure the garden is set up for late in the season, because it's so easy to go to the garden center in May and just buy everything that's
Sure.
blooming and you plant it and it's great. And then after May, you have nothing colorful in your garden. So focusing on making sure your garden has color in it all season long, whether that's through leaves or berries or late season blooms. Matt, what were some plants that we like for late in the season? Like
Yeah,
Amsonia, I know is one of them you
yeah,
love.
like Amsonia, your asters, goldenrods are starting to flower now. So there's plenty of even good native plants that you can put in your landscape. And if you already have an established landscape, just adding something like mums,
Mhm.
to your landscape. I know here in Dublin, the deer pressure is crazy. So maybe not kale and cabbage, but they tend to leave the mums alone. So putting mums in there will add some good fall color,
Yeah,
even if it's just for a short amount of time.
and I love using shrubs that have a fall color. So just much like a sugar maple colors into a beautiful orange. We have so many shrubs that you can plug into your garden, smaller things that provide that fall color too.
So you mentioned the deer population, always a hot topic
Yeah.
here in Dublin. A lot of discussion about that. Dublin City Council passed a no feed ordinance recently prohibiting people from feeding deer to try to control that population. We've had nature education coordinator Barbara Ray on Link Ahead and talked extensively about this. But there's some horticultural considerations too. So can you talk about what are some plants that can maybe help keep the deer away?
Yeah, I would say anything with a real like pungent type smell. So a lot of your herbs, salvia is one that comes to mind. There's one that we've been using that's called calumet, and calumet has a real strong herby smell to it, and they tend to leave that alone. So anything that kind of has those strong pungent smells, they tend to leave alone.
Ornamental onions is a very
Yeah.
popular one. It doesn't. It's a very common plant that you're going to see all around, and you wouldn't even know it was an onion. But the deer don't like things with a lot of flavor for some reason. So anything in the mint family, anything onion or garlic, they'll leave that alone.
Yeah.
I think I might go for the mint over the onion.
You don't want the ornamental onions?
Oh,
Well-
they're beautiful.
yeah.
Oh, they're everywhere in the right of ways.
Yeah.
The little purple balls. And as far as the mints go, it's anything in the mint family. So anything with square stems. So salvias, agastaches, different types of ornamental mints. So there's so many different options there.
All right, for someone who does not have a green thumb and they're trying to beautify their yard on their own, what are the common mistakes that newbies might make?
One big mistake that I see with newbies is going to the garden center in May when everything looks fantastic.
Yeah.
And garden centers are set up to where, like, okay, if it's flowering now, we're going to be selling it. They're not really looking at selling stuff that's going to be hot like in September, October. So people will go and load up with all of these flowers and, late May, early June, and then they'll plant it and it looks fantastic. And then July, August, September comes around and there's really not a whole lot of interest left in the garden. So they really front load their garden and they don't think of, the back end. So that would be one thing.
And to piggyback on that, everything's full price in May. But once you get into September, October, even November,
Discounts.
these places are trying to get the landscape plants out so they can get Christmas trees in.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so you're talking 25, 50, then 75% off.
Yep.
And the plants may not look near as nice as they did, but if they're perennials, they'll come back real strong.
Wow, so many
Yeah.
hot tips already.
Yeah.
So if people have a trouble spot where things aren't growing in their yard or garden, give us a few plants to keep in mind for that.
Trouble spot's interesting because a trouble spot could be for various reasons. It could be a wet spot. It could be a super dry spot, a super shady spot. I would say embrace the trouble spot rather than trying to fix the trouble spot and make it how you want it to be. Use plants that work in that trouble spot. So if you've got a wet low spot in your yard, plant a rain garden there. Go online, find good resources for good rain garden plants in our area and go from there.
All right, now let's talk about city projects and how things are planned and beautification and natural purposes here. So when people see plants and flowers in all the parks and just like, wow, these colors really pop off that dark mulch bed, just beautiful. That is planned and very well thought out, right?
Yeah. Yeah, we do. So a lot of our time in the winter is spent planning for this stuff that we're going to do. Like, we'll start planning for 2025 and thinking ahead. So you mentioned mulch. Our goal when we plant stuff is we're thinking like 3, 4, 5 years down the road. And our goal is to not even see the mulch, except
Really?
for maybe a little across the front. We like these plantings where the plants are able to be planted together and interact with one another. And that kind of lends itself to, it gets so full that we don't end up with a ton of mulch. It cuts down on the amount of mulch that we're having to do each year and cuts down on weed maintenance and things like that. So
Along those same lines, how do you decide on the look of a big park versus a middle of a roundabout versus the entrance to a mixed use development, that kind of thing?
The area kind of guides itself to where it needs to be. So if we're talking a park that abuts a natural area and it's got a lot of natural beauty, we may go more natural with the planting. Then there's some parks that they've been set up for more formal landscapes. So that's when we do things more formal and symmetrical.
So you guys have had your hands on pretty much every park in Dublin. So what really stands out as something that you're super proud of?
for me personally, I have done a lot of work at Kaufman Park, and I've always kind of thought of Kaufman as like the heartbeat of the city. That's where our city hall is here, our development, the rec center. So just, some of the landscapes that I've done over there and, had a part of around the Kaufman House and stuff. That's one that really stands out to me. So
Kaufman Park looks fantastic. Make sure to go take a look
yeah,
at that.
thank you.
I would say personally, for me, it's the containers downtown and at Riverside Crossing. So we use a lot of annual plants in there. So it's just changing those out 4 times a year. It's always something new, always new color. And then every year it's different.
I mean, you guys get to do some cool stuff. Now, which one of you actually created a new hybrid plant?
I didn't create it, but there's a tree that was found in Southern Ohio that it has variegation on it, which is like a genetic mutation that nature did itself. And I'm working with a gentleman north of Columbus here to get this tree hopefully like grafted and we can get this thing going. And if it works good, if it shows vigor and good fall color and stuff, then we're hoping to get a patent on it.
And Matt gets to name it.
I get
Yes.
to name it and
Wow.
all
Do
of
you
that
have
stuff,
names like
so-
in the queue that you were? Don't no, you don't have to
I was
share.
gonna
That's probably
say,
for their.
I think
podcast.
we need to put it on social media. And
I
let
don't really
people
have
decide.
anything in the queue. I mean, we've
No.
discussed names before, but when you're thinking of a tree name, it's tough.
I will say you have already named a plant.
Oh,
I did. So similar scenario. I found it here in Dublin and named it a sea mare pine. So it was a Scotch pine that had a genetic mutation on it that we took cuttings from and grafted, and we have a few of them planted in the city here. So yeah.
wow, that's amazing. And then Tim, I know you've been involved with protecting native plants from invasive species and things like that. So that's something that people don't talk about every day.
Yeah, so we have a pretty cool plant in Dublin called Arabis patens. It's a endangered rock cress we have here.
Right.
And so I've worked, I've been working on that for 10 years now, just
Mhm.
making sure that the populations we have stay intact.
So our listeners can tell by now you are both experts at this stuff. You're passionate and just a whole lot of fun. So then you decide, hey, let's jump into the podcast world too. So first question, who came up with the name of your podcast, Shrubby Buddies?
Well, it's interesting. So a couple of years ago, Tim and I were kind of sitting after a conference we'd been at, and some of these plant classes that we go to are kind of dry and dull. And we're like, we need to like do one of these and liven it up a little bit.
Absolutely.
So we started creating podcast episode names, but at the time they were more like, what could we name our talks at these conferences? And
Oh.
these funny names, and we had them all down there. And then we were discussing podcast and never really pulled the trigger. And his wife was the one who was actually like, you guys need to do it. Like,
Yeah.
get the stuff and just do it. So we went all in on it earlier this year, and we were looking down through those class names, and Shrubby Buddies just was one that jumped out to us. It was Shrubby Buddies, and then
Adding shrubs to your perennial gardens.
Yeah.
I love that.
That's funny.
and it just kind of stuck. So
I mean, you started in April this year, and I got to say, you have some really creative episode titles:
Yeah.
Grass Warfare, Mowers versus Meadows, Small Trees, Big Personalities, The Fascinating World of Milkweeds and Monarchs. So, what's been the biggest surprise about launching your own podcast?
oh geez, the biggest surprise was when we first launched was just the editing process, like how much
Sure.
work kind of goes into like getting
Yeah.
stuff set up. And
Scott, our producer, is shaking his head right now.
yeah, and it's really weird too when you first start like trying to talk to an audience that isn't in front of you.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And then I did one that was solo, which was even
Wow.
that was crazy. Like just talking to myself was
Right.
really strange. But I would say that was probably the toughest challenge for us.
Sure.
Kind of surprised me was just how much work does go into it.
I've been surprised by just the amount of listens we're getting. We have some dedicated friends and family who just listen to every episode. They're all stars, but then all the people who have just started listening via word of mouth, it's real. I'm really surprised by that.
Well, it's so relatable, I think, because everyone cares whether you're a green thumb or not.
Yeah.
You want to be better, but everyone has some plants around the house or in their office or whatever, and it's just something that is very relatable for people to listen to.
Absolutely.
And you guys do tool reviews too, which is awesome. What are the tools you can't live without?
So we haven't done too many tool reviews yet. We've talked about some tools in some of our episodes, and we plan on doing like some more in-depth tool reviews. But I would say like for me personally, there's two, and I think you're probably in the same boat, Tim. And that would be a good set of pruners, and then a good sharp hand pruning saw. So those would be like my two must-have tools.
I would add perennial knife to that list
Okay.
for planting. Just when you're planting smaller pots, having a good sharp perennial knife to dig into the soil,
Or
great.
trowel, or a trowel.
Just as long as it's sturdy.
So what's your advice on shopping for garden tools? I mean, everyone has a budget. So how can people find both value and quality in tools?
If we're talking about pruners, I would go with one that has parts that you can buy. So the blade, if it gets dull or chipped, you can buy a new blade and fix it. So we're talking like $45 to $65 price range for those, but they last forever. So the ones that I got when I started here in 2013, I still use the same exact pair of pruners. I've gotten a new blade a couple times. I might have gotten a new locking nut because I lost it, but it's the same pair, and it was probably $60.
Holy cow. Now, so what's an example of a cheap throwaway tool that, obviously you keep using the same tool, but for people at home, is there something like, hey, maybe just buy one of these once a year or really invest in this?
That's a tough one.
It is. I was thinking gloves, even though they're not a tool. I go through gloves. Matt doesn't wear gloves. He's like, he's so cool.
Likes to get his hands dirty.
I do. Yeah.
And so I just buy cheap gloves in large quantities, and I just roll through those pretty quick.
Okay, well, before we jump into our rapid fire questions, you can see I brought some props for this episode.
Oh, yeah.
These are from an office here at City Hall. I won't say whose. But let's just do a quick one-off segment called How to Save Lindsay's Plants. Sorry for our listeners, but describe this plant for me. Like, can anyone tell me what it's called and describe it for everyone listening here?
Yeah, so she has a Dieffenbachia, or sometimes called a dumb cane, and she thinks it looks bad, but I personally think it looks pretty good. I don't know. Maybe, do you ever fertilize it?
I have not fertilized it yet.
As far as indoor plants go, overwatering is probably the biggest mistake people make with indoor plants. So really watering when the plant needs it, not just because you think, oh, it's been 2 weeks, so I need to water this plant. This time of the year, you're probably watering a little bit more because they're actively growing more sunlight, kind of lends itself to that. But yeah, fertilizing it occasionally. It doesn't have to be like you're fertilizing your annual flowers at home, but maybe once or twice a year, giving it some fertilizer. It looks like it's getting good light. I don't see too much burning on the leaves. So yeah, bright indirect light.
You're making me feel a little bit better.
No, I think it looks wonderful. Yeah.
Then we'll move on to my obviously dead orchid. Anyone have any advice for this? I mean, do I throw it out, or if I just, keep working at it, will it bloom again one day?
She's not dead.
Again,
I like that.
Again, like, I think the orchid it's not flowering right now, but it will. And I don't think orchids are one that just continually put on flowers, maybe as they get older. But yeah, I think you're doing good. You've got a nice orchid soil bark blend there. It's fantastic.
Okay.
Lindsay's like, yes, thank you. I did all of that.
That's good to know. And then finally, we have this beautiful succulent arrangement that the horticulture team assembled for the Memorial Tournament, actually, in our villa. And I have to say, that one looks pretty nice. And they say you can't kill a succulent. So I'm really happy about this one.
Yeah. I know people that have killed succulents, but
you have to keep these dry.
Oh,
so
keep them dry.
Overwatering will kill these, and getting them as much light as possible, so as close to the window as possible, so they don't get too long and lanky.
Just think cactus. So that's going to be something similar to that. They're going to like that real dry, dry air, dry soil, heat, sunlight, all of that. And what I do with the succulents, especially these like ones with the fat leaves, is you can kind of squeeze them, and when they're hydrated, they're pretty solid. But as they become dehydrated and need water, they become kind of soft and mushy, and that's when you would want to water the plant.
All right, this seems like a great segue into rapid fire. So if you guys are ready, let's roll with it. Do people tend to underwater or overwater their plants and yards?
Outside stuff, probably underwater.
Okay.
And then you had mentioned, Matt, that people overwater in their houseplants. Is that right?
Yeah, I would say overwatering is the biggest mistake in houseplants. Underwatering outside, overwatering inside.
Okay, what's your go-to plant or shrub when all else fails?
For me personally, it would be some sort of like an ornamental grass. And that would vary on the situation, whether I need something tall or short. But
I'll go with Allium millennium, which is an ornamental onion that has just really clean foliage that's grass-like, but then it's adorned with really bright, colorful ball-shaped flowers.
And
All right.
it'll help keep the deer away.
That's
Yeah.
it. Wow. All right, Matt. Well, once people find out about your career and expertise, what is the most common question they ask you?
what's your favorite plant?
Tim,
We're
what about you?
cliche.
I also get that one too. And then I follow that up with, do you mean tree or shrub? Are
They
we
get really specific.
talking evergreen or deciduous? It's a very difficult question to answer.
I really thought the answer would be, hey, can you come to my house and look
Yeah,
at this?
No, so when we're working here in the city, the number of if I had $1 for every time someone was like, "Oh, you need to come plant that pot at my house," or come mulch my house, we'd be pretty wealthy.
That's a
but
good thing, though. Would you?
Well, and I was thinking about that with the 4 times a year. Yeah, can you
Yeah.
come to my house and plant
Oh,
something
we get
it
4 different
constantly.
We do get
times
that
a
a
year?
lot.
But we love it. We love the interaction with the Dublin residents,
Yeah.
and
Right.
I would say generally speaking, they love interacting with us and appreciate what we do.
It's
so.
my favorite part of the job is when I
Yeah.
get to interact with people about
Yeah.
what we're doing.
Well, they really do love it. And we get so many compliments. And what I love about you guys is you are so professional and yet you're a little competitive too. So I know you like to do, hanging basket competitions and things like that. So talk a little bit about that. How does that work? You guys constantly competing?
So Tim is the most competitive person that I know in my entire life. So he is like the simplest game, like at lunch, flipping a bottle cap across the table. This guy here acts like it's the Super Bowl of this game. But yeah, I don't know why. I think it's just fun to have these little competitions to get everyone involved, and we get to kind of poke each other and stuff. Like, oh, mine's better than yours, sort of a thing. So it's fun banter between all of us when we do these little contests.
My hanging basket this year got the least amount of votes.
Whoa, whoa, whoa.
So-
But
Is
it's
that-
still got
Yeah.
votes.
I got crushed.
People love.
Well, it
people
got
love
like
to vote.
Lindsay, it got like 6 votes.
And those are all you and your wife.
Yeah. Literally.
My wife didn't even vote for mine.
Aw. Well, better luck next year.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Does the city purposely plant green flowers and plants to kind of highlight our official Dublin green?
I wouldn't say that we purposely do it. I think it just kind of happens. Most plants are
Are
green.
green.
Right, most plants are green, except for when they flower. Obviously that's where we're going to get color. But I don't think we go into anything thinking like, oh, we're going to plant this because it's Dublin's official color. Just plants are green.
They don't have to go through the brand manager
We
Bruce
don't.
over
Ew,
here.
no,
Get
it's
the right
green.
shade of
I'm out there with the
green.
Pantone magic
Yeah.
color.
This is the wrong color green.
Yeah. Hey guys, you gotta have to move something around. All right, let's go with Tim. What's more inviting to you? Seeing a video of a tropical island, mountaintop cabin, or campsite by a lake?
Campsite by a lake, and it's not even close.
Wow, Matt.
Samesies.
Well,
What?
Campsite by the lake.
Okay, it's summer. How do you stay hydrated out there? Water, Gatorade, hats, bandanas, all the above?
For me, it's water. When it's hot, you can't drink enough water out
Right,
there.
absolutely.
And then the air conditioning too.
Yeah.
I know that doesn't keep me hydrated necessarily,
It
but
helps.
it makes me feel good.
Yeah, we were talking when we were reading through this. We were talking. I'm like, oh, for you, Tim, it's definitely the cubicle AC in the computer there. But yeah, water and Gatorade for me, and I always have a hat on. So
Yeah, that helps.
all right, flip of the coin. It's wintertime. What are your go-tos to stay warm?
There is one item of gardening gear that can mean the difference between frostbite and cozy feet. Socks.
Good socks. Yep.
this guy.
Lieutenant Dan.
Nice.
Yeah, I would say for the wintertime, Carhartts. I wear a lot of stuff. Carhartt sweatshirts, Carhartt bibs, or the lined pants, and like Tim said, socks. Good warm socks. We have to wear steel toe or safety toes here, which having that, piece of metal or whatever,
yeah,
gets
well-
cold in the winter. So your toes will get, your toes can get cold. So
I run hot, and I know you do too,
Yeah.
and it's always my toes that get cold first.
Sure.
All right, last question. So, who is your dream podcast guest in the horticulture world and dream guest overall? Anyone in the world?
So we agreed that our dream podcast guest is for the horticulture world is Pete Udoff.
Yeah.
Who is a renowned garden designer from
the Netherlands.
the Netherlands. Mine personally is Billy Joel.
Oh, that would be
Wow.
good.
So
Get him to sing and play the piano.
I just have so many questions for him.
I was thinking about this. I don't have like this idol like Tim does with Billy Joel, but I'm a sports guy. I've been a LeBron James fan since he came into the league. So maybe LeBron James. I don't
There you
know.
go.
So yeah.
Oh, that might be mine. Can I sit in? on
Are
that
you a
one?
LeBron fan?
Big LeBron fan.
Yeah, me too.
You don't want to come to
Bigger
Billy
when
Joel?
He was in Cleveland.
Yeah,
but
for
you
sure.
know how that
I
Yeah,
would
goes.
say
for
have
sure.
your people reach out to their people and see what happens.
Yeah.
Well, Matt and Tim, you have been Dream Podcast guests and so much fun. Thank you both for your dedicated service to our city and for keeping it beautiful all year long.
Yeah. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
We've had fun.
It's our pleasure.
And to our listeners, thank you as well for taking time to connect with your city. And we say that at the end of every episode, and please know that's not a throwaway line. You're the reason we do this, and it's nice to get recognized for the efforts. We mentioned at the beginning of the teaser about an award for Link Ahead. Well,
That's right. So I just got back from a conference. It's a national conference called 3CMA, and they recognize government communicators from all over the United States and Canada. And we got the top award, the Savvy, for
Awesome.
Link Ahead podcast. So congratulations, Bruce. Huge congratulations to Scott Light, our podcast producer. And thanks again to all of the listeners and everyone in the city who supports this effort.
outstanding. And again, thanks to everyone who makes this podcast go. Tune in next time as we continue to explore the many personalities and experiences that make Dublin a thriving place to live, work, and grow.